For this demo, I'm going to talk about how to make threads. So the way I've set up this demo is I've actually created the final result, and in this video I'm going to go back and explain how I got to this final tire. So the goal here is to get this kind of threading on a tire, and the first thing I should mention is the way I've built this model is I've created quarters. So I've created a curve that is revolved every 90 degrees, which gives you 1/4 of the wheel. And there's a few advantages to it. One of them is for the memory, because there's so much going on for the threading. There's so many surfaces, so it takes a lot of your your computer's capacity, especially the CPU. So anyway, it takes a lot of memory from your computer. So if you break it down into quarters or even eighths every 45 degrees, it could make it easier for you to see the results before you create an array and duplicate this as many times as you want. In this case, 4 times. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. So for this specific demo, I've already set up the curves. Everything is there. And the way it's going to work is I have this initial surface. This is my reference surface. And I'm going to map out this more complicated texture to it. It's more than a texture, it's actually modeled. But I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So first I wanted to show you the goal, which is to get something like this. And then I'm going to explain how I got there. So to do that, I'm going to open a different file. I'm going to open this one. And I'm going to go over everything I did. So I'm going to select all of the surfaces. Let's see, can I select everything and hide? Can I select all of the poly surfaces and hide this? So the first thing I did was set up some curves which kind of represent the final result I'm looking for, which is this kind of frame for the wheel, the rim of the wheel, and the tire. Now the tire is broken up into 2 sections. One is the top section, which has the threading, and then it has this small detail here where there cannot be any threading because the wheel kind of goes in and wraps around. Now I haven't created any material surface because this is only for for aesthetics. It's only for rendering. So it's not an actual object that could be made. It's just to have a nice rendering that like physically catches the light the way it should. It's not a bump map, it's physically modeled. So we're just going to go straight into it, and at this point I've already taken the curve, made some quick modifications to it, and then I created a revolve of 90 degrees, so 1/4 of the wheel. And we're just going to jump straight into it and talk about how to create a pattern and make it repeat on the wheel, and how to figure out how wide or how long you would want this kind of setup to be, so that the threading actually matches the size onto the physical surface. So that was kind of a strange way to explain it, but basically the way it works is you take this surface here and you flatten it out. And once you have it as a flat kind of, in this case it's a curve, so it's taking your surface and making a flat version of a curve that gives you an idea of how as a flat surface it would wrap around this 3-dimensional curved surface. So basically there's 2 features to it, and I wrote them down because I don't use them too often. But the first one is to create a UV curve, and the second one is to apply the curve. So the first thing we're going to do is select the surface, and it's only a single surface. I'm not selecting the rounded edge here, that's not going to have a thread, just this one. And you might have to explode them depending on how you created this revolved surface. So I'm selecting it, and I'm going to type in create UV curve. And I think I wrote it wrong here. It's supposed to be create with an E and UV curve. So once you create the UV curve, it tells you select curve on UV to create UV curve. So we don't want to do that, so we'll just press enter. And by default, it gives us the edges of this three-dimensional surface as if it was flattened out. So it's kind of like if you take a shoe and you flatten out the pattern, you'll get this. Now it doesn't make sense for a tire because the tire is a rubber part, but it gives you an idea of what it would look like if you flattened out the rubber part. So this gives us a really good idea of where this pattern would be if it was flattened out. I mean, the proportions of it. So now that we have this kind of guideline, we can start creating a pattern. Now I've already spent the time and created it, and I'm just going to go over how I created it. So the first step here was to create this box, which we just did, although the new box I created is not the same dimension. The reason why it's not the same dimension is because I kind of modified the original curve for that surface before I revolved it, so it made some changes to the proportions of it. So it looks like the video I was recording got cut off, so I went on and recorded the entire thing, and then realized that the video wasn't recording just about halfway through. So I'm gonna go back and go over what I just covered. So you're not gonna see the entire steps, but I'm gonna go over the basic process. So where we left off was around creating this pattern. And what I was explaining is that the way I created it is with a few curves. And essentially, I just created an offset of some of these existing curves. So I'm just going to run you through the process really quickly. I shouldn't be in perspective to do this. I should go from the top view. But so the basic process here is you go from your top view, you set up your pattern, and the way you're going to do it is by creating an offset. You can't really use curves to create thickness for this pattern. So it seems like there's something off. Yeah, it's the grid snap. Okay. So we're creating an offset, and for now I'm making it really small. It doesn't matter that much, but just make sure it's consistent. You know, if you have a space of let's say one unit here, make sure that it's going to be 1 unit here as well. So that's the first thing you're going to do, just create some thickness. Think about where you want to cut off the pattern. Like in this case, it comes to a single point. This might be something you want, or it might be something you want to avoid. It really depends on what you're building, what kind of pattern. But so, again, I don't want to spend too much time going through the process, but I do want to show you some techniques. One of the techniques would be you can use a fillet, and you don't have to make it round. If you make a fillet of 0 for your curves, then what it does is it basically connects your curve. And as you can see, there isn't a radii in there. There's nothing. You know, it's just a curve, and it comes to a point. So this is a really helpful command to use. But you have to keep in mind the way that you're using it. There is a process to it. For example, if I use a fillet and I say I want to create a fillet from here to there, then it cuts off the rest of my curve, which I actually need in this case. I need that curve. So the way I would do that type of detail is I would use the split command, and using the split command, you can select the object that you want to split, in this case, this one. Select the cutting object, and now you're left with these segments of the same curve instead of a single curve. Now the reasons why you would want to do this here is because if you do your fillet with 0, then you can just connect them, and it just makes the whole process so much quicker. Just press enter, select both of your curves and connect them, press enter, select both of your curves, and it just does everything much quicker than it would if you if you manually did this. Now, as I said before, if you don't split this curve, you're going to end up with one segment, and then you're missing the rest. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to type in the split command. make sure you select these curves, and now we can do a fillet, selecting this and that. Now, if you don't delete these curves, you're going to be left with a small curve in between, which is fine in this case, but it's just something to think about. As you're modeling things, just think about what's the process and how to get things done as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible, because you don't want to spend a whole day setting up a pattern. Plus, sometimes you spend a really long time setting up something and you realize that the proportions are off, and you might have to scale it or scale it in one dimension. So this is something that happens a lot. You spend a very long time setting up your pattern and you realize, actually, it's not what I want. I need to make modifications to it. I need to scale it. I need to change something about it. And so that's one of the reasons why you really need to be fast when you do that type of stuff, because otherwise you're wasting your time, you're wasting your client's time if you're working with someone and they're paying you for your time. So just try to make the process as quick and efficient as possible. But yeah, let's keep going. So once you've created your overall pattern, you can do things like you can mirror the patterns. Let's say we're done with all of this and we want to create the spacing and just kind of finalize this. So we'll join these blocks and we'll mirror this to the other side. So as you can see, I've created a center line. And so the way you can create this center line here is you can make a line from the midpoint. And then you have this kind of reference of where everything should be mirrored. So that's something also that you should think about. Do you want to use a center line for your pattern, or do you want it to be asymmetrical? Maybe this is mirrored. Like, that's another thing you could do. You could mirror your pattern and don't make a copy in this case. So there's just so much you can do. Yeah, the other thing I had covered before was how to copy it. So the way you would copy it is, at this point you have this offset. So let's say we want to copy this entire pattern. Instead of making a copy, instead of using the copy command and moving it from, in this case it would be from, let's say, this point. Yeah, like you need some kind of reference. So in this case, we'll use this point as a reference and this point as a reference. So you need a common ground as of the spacing you want to use. You need something that is consistent in your pattern. But so you can make a copy that could work, or another way to do it is when you have your pattern set up, you can do an array. So you can type in array, and then here you can look at the Y and the X, and we are going to use the X to make a copy of the same pattern 80 times, using the Y at 1, Z at 1. And then if you click at a random place, you'll see that you get 80 copies, but we don't want to make it random, we want to make it a specific distance, and the distance would be just like the way we did the copy, from a starting point, like the end of your pattern, to the spacing, the pattern where it's at, and the spacing on top of that, which would be here. So again, the way I did this is I selected the pattern I want to copy. I made an array, selected the number of copies, so 80 copies. 1 is fine, so press enter, enter, and then we have a starting point and an end point. So this is the distance between all of the copies. Once you've duplicated this entire pattern, one way to do it is to move all of this pattern onto this kind of reference of a size. Or you can do the opposite, take this thing, your boundary, and move it to where you want it to be. At this point, what you're going to want to do is make sure that the pattern actually repeats in a way that is centered. So in this case, I used the middle point of this line. And you also want to make sure that the middle point lines up here. If I set up a line, you'll see that it is lining up. Oh, actually, it is not. Okay, so if it's not, we're going to have to adjust the pattern. So this is a good example. So here we know it begins at the middle of this line. And so we want to have the same relationship of where it begins and where it ends, because it's going to repeat as it goes around the wheel. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to select the entire pattern. And I'm going to deselect the reference of where the pattern needs to go. And I'm going to scale it in 1 dimension from the middle of this curve to the middle of my other pattern, and here it is. So now if we check, we'll see that this pattern actually lines up, which means it should repeat from this side here, it should repeat here. So that's basically how you would set up this pattern. Now, at this time, what you're going to want to do is set up some kind of line and clean up your pattern. And what I mean by that is you're going to want to set up a line. I don't know what just happened. Let's see. If we do a straight line and we line it up to the middle. Okay, so now it's working. So you might have to do stuff like that, where you select a line to cut whatever goes beyond this line. So I'm going to trim everything here. Okay, escape. And then you might have to... I'm just going to hide this for now. But once you hide it, you might have to go in and set up a bunch of straight line. Or maybe you want to set up a long line and then split this line by all of your patterns, or all of these lines, and then delete this. It's another way to do the same thing. Instead of creating small segments, you can create one segment and then delete the ones you do not want. So there's always a few different ways to do different things. That's one of them. Just going to join everything. And I'm going to show everything because I have this kind of pattern reference that I'm using. And then you can see the next step, which was basically what I just did. I just finished it up, cut off everything that goes beyond it, make sure it repeats and it lines up correctly. And then the last step in this process was for me to make an extrusion and remove whatever I want or don't want. Now, the way I built it was more as a waffle maker. I created the negative of the pattern I wanted. I don't know why I did it this way. It's just in my mind, as I was thinking of the pattern and looking at the curves, it made sense for me to build it this way. And the way I did it is I actually selected all of these boxes and I extruded them. And then I didn't really like the way it looked. So I used all of these boxes to remove away from this box. And the feature I used was actually Boolean difference. So I did a Boolean difference between a big box, a rectangular box, and then I subtracted from this box with all of these small details. And I couldn't do everything at once because it was too many objects at once. So the way I did it is I selected them from a different view, such as this one. I just came really close up to the object and selected only the objects on this, on this section of the pattern. And then I went to the side of it and I selected all of the patterns on this side. And I did that for each of them. So I did each row of the pattern one by one, so that it wouldn't take as much memory from my computer. Because the software itself is kind of limited, and sometimes it goes and it calculates things for a long time. And the problem with doing everything at once is you might have to wait 10 minutes and you don't know if it's going to work or not. So sometimes it's much better to do it section by section, one detail after the other. One thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to check if the video worked, because it hasn't been working very well today. It's been cutting off. So okay, it seems like it's still recording, which is great. So that's good. So let's keep going and let's talk about how I finished up this pattern. So the next step for me was to use this and do the opposite process. So I took this entire block and I removed from another block and I was able to adjust the height of it. So that's one of the reasons why I built it this way, because I wasn't sure about the depth of the pattern. And the good thing about this is if you start with the depth and you create your pattern and you adjust it to the actual surface here, and then you realize that it's not the correct depth, you want it to go deeper into the rubber pattern, then you can use this waffle maker and you can go deeper into your pattern. So this is one way to kind of go back and forth and make adjustments to your pattern. It can be really useful, and sometimes it's needed. But then again, you know, once you have your pattern, you could just scale it in one dimension if you want it to be deeper. Let me show you a quick example. If I scale it in 1D from here, and I cannot hit the F9 key, so I'm going to have to click on Grid Snap. So from where the pattern begins to, and again I have to undo. For some reason I have a shortcut on the F9 key, so if I click it, it's going to stop the video. But yeah, just to show you an example, you could scale your pattern this way. Now in this case it works, but in some cases, if you had a fillet on an edge, it might create distortion to your filleted edge. So you have to think about this when you're modeling things. Keep the fillets for last, because it might create some problems with your patterns. And in fact, for a pattern like this, I would recommend to avoid fillets, because fillet edges are going to make your file very, very heavy. And again, it takes a lot of your computer's memory to be able to not only create the pattern, but then apply it in 3 dimensions to a complicated curve, or curved surface in this case. But so I think you get the idea. We're creating a bunch of curves, we're creating a bunch of boxes, using the boxes to do a Boolean union or subtraction, depending on what we're doing. If we are going up, we would do a Boolean union, so that the pattern protrudes from the block, or from the reference pattern, or we can go in. But so I think you get the idea. You want it to be whatever pattern you're using. In this case, we want it to be kind of like this, with a closed off edge. And you want to build it however you can, but you want to make sure that you have the right kind of spacing and that the pattern can be duplicated and that it repeats correctly. So you want to build it in a way where it's easy for the pattern to apply and to repeat. So once I had done that, I created this surface on top, and so you're going to need this surface because the way it works, and let me just show you how it works instead of trying to explain it and then do it. So you're going to use this thing here under, it's going to be under transform, and it's called flow along surface, and here it is, flow along surface. And so you're going to type in this command or go to the same menu I just used, and again it's under transform, flow along surface. So you're going to go into this feature and it's going to tell you select object to flow along surface. So what this is your pattern. What pattern do you want on this surface? Once you've selected it, because you can select multiple objects, once you've selected the group of objects, or in this case the joint object, you can press enter. After that, it's going to ask you for the base surface. So this is the reference geometry that you're using to map this pattern onto this pattern. And this is actually this flat surface I was telling you about. So you're going to create this flat surface, select it, and then it tells you where is the target surface. And the target surface is going to be this surface here. And it's going to take some time because your pattern is relatively complicated. Now my computer is very powerful, so it doesn't take too much time. And if you've done it correctly, it should either go up or down. So in this case, I didn't do it correctly. I think it's the order of selection. But so if I deleted my reference, you'll see that instead of going down, it goes up. And in some cases, maybe this is what you want. In my case, it's reversed, it's upside down. So I do not want that, so I'm going to undo. And I'm going to go back and try this again. So the object we wanted is this object. Okay, the base surface, and I'm going to select the back of the surface this time. Okay, press, actually you don't have to press anything, just select the target. The target is this surface. And it did the same thing. Okay, that's strange because I just did it before and it seemed to work better. So let's try that again, and let's see. If we select this object, maybe it depends on whether you select the top or the bottom, because now I selected from underneath the object. Press enter, select the base. I'm going to select the base from the top, and I'll select the top of this surface. So it really depends on the surface you're using and the orientation of this surface. Yeah, it's doing the same thing. So another way to do it is if you take this surface. It's good that this issue is happening to me because it gives you an idea on how you can modify your pattern if it's not working and how you can adjust it. So you can rotate this by 90 degrees. And because it's flipped upside down, it should make the surface or the pattern copy upside down onto that other surface. Now, in a similar way, you might have this surface being too, like the UV orientation of the surface might be too wide instead of high. You know, the height and the width might be upside down. So you might want to rotate the surface by 90 degrees and then see what happens. And now another thing that's really important is the position of this surface. So I want to make sure that the position actually matches up to this corner up here. And what did I do? It doesn't line up. Okay. Okay, here it is. So let's try that again. We'll do flow along surface. I'm just going to type it in. Flow along surface. Okay, we're selecting this pattern. Press enter. Press the base. The base is going to be the surface we just adjusted. And we're going to select this surface that we want to create the pattern onto. And it's doing exactly the same thing. This is really strange. Okay, let's see. What if we select this surface and we move it underneath? Let's try that again. Flow along surface. We're going to flow the object would be this one. Okay, the base would be this bottom surface. And this is the reference. Oh, I know what happened. It's because I did a new revolve. But yeah, so it worked. So the placement of your reference is going to have a big impact on how your pattern duplicates. For now, I'm just going to hide this surface because I'm not sure if it's going to be upside down, and it turns out it is upside down. So let's delete this, show this surface which I hid. And so another thing you can do is you can flip your pattern. So if I go in and I say flip, it's going to flip the orientation of all of my surfaces. Okay, the entire object has been flipped. And what it does is it reverses the orientation of the pattern. So for some reason it thinks it's upside down. So now that I've done that, I think I need to move this up. Yeah, it would make sense for this to be in reverse order. So now I'm going to do the same thing, flow along surface, using the pattern, selecting the base surface. And then the target, again, is the same target surface. Now, if this doesn't work, I would flip the target surface itself and see what that does. Okay, so we're going to select the reference and hide it. And this time it worked. So this is one way to work around your pattern. If it comes in upside down, what you can do is flip a surface. If you don't know where to find the flip surface, typically I type it in because that's just what I do. I'm used to this software. I've been using it for more than 10 years at this point. But you should be able to find it under transform, because transform should allow you to transform your UV. I'm not going to look into it, but it should be here somewhere. It should be under the orientation, I guess. It should be one of these tools. Sometimes it has a different name. I would expect it to be under the UV. But I'm not going to look for it. You should be able to find it under transform. If you can't find it, go under the help and look for flip. Actually, I did some research, and all I did was go into F1. So if you go to the help using F1, you can go to flip, and here you have where can you find this command. And this will tell you where to find a command like flip. Flip is actually an interesting one because it's not in the top menus. It tells you that right here, as part of the menus, it is not on any menus. Shortcuts, there is no shortcuts. And then here you can see there is toolbars. So within the toolbars, there is the flip command. And so once I saw that, I figured out, oh yeah, of course, the flip command is here. It's in the standard menu under analyze direction or flip. So if you use the right click on your mouse, you can flip the direction. So this is where you'll find the flip command. Again, I would recommend that you type in the command as opposed to clicking on this icon. But yeah, this is interesting because it's actually not part of the menus. It's part of your layout, your software layout. Also, if you, for some reason, if you have a tough time clicking on an icon or finding the icon that you use a lot, you can always use the arrow key, and then the whole menu expands, and you can click on it and drag it out. So you can drag any menus wherever you want. You can even have them as their own sub-menus, or you can take them out, or you can even put them aside wherever you'd like. Yeah, you can put it on top, depending on how you select it. You can select it from the top banner. So now it becomes a windowed layout, I guess. I'm not sure exactly the official name for it. Or if you select analyze as a title, then you can dock your features. So there's two ways to place the different icons and the different features. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend customizing too many of these. Personally, I only dock one of them, which is the bitmap, which lets me import an image and have it as a reference. But other than that, I don't like to add too many of these because it's cumbersome to your layout. So I wouldn't recommend creating too many of these additional shortcuts. So hopefully this was useful to you, and I hope that you learned a lot from this video, and that on your own time you can create your own pattern and get them to work and repeat the way you want them to. And yeah, I just hope this was a helpful video to you guys.